Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and I'm going to be doing my November wrap-up. I've read a lot of books this month. I've read about 10 books and DNF'd 1. Here are some of the stats of the books I've read. I've read 5 5-star books, 1 4-star book, 1 3.5-star book, 2 3-star book, and 1 2-star book. 8 of the books are from the library, 1 is the one that I've owned, and 1 is an ARC. There were 7 physical books and 3 ebooks. There was 2 adult romances, 2 adult mystery thrillers, 1 horror, 1 YA contemporary, and 4 YA fantasies. That's all the stats I got, so let's jump right into it. The first book is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. We follow 2 characters, Lucy and Josh, who are both assistants to CEOs of the publishing company, and they're at war with each other. A promotion comes up and they're pitted against each other for that said promotion, and one will have to resign while the other one gets promoted. I gave this book 5 stars because I absolutely love it. I initially picked up this book because of the hate to love romance trope, which is one of my favorite tropes. There was such an amazing chemistry between these 2 characters, and it reminded me of Christina Lauren books because their characters have such an amazing chemistry in every single one of their books. I'm also always blown away that Christina and Lauren are 2 different people. Christina and Lauren. This book was surprisingly funny. There was a lot of witty banter, and that witty banter really solidified their chemistry together. The smut scenes were a blast. The sexual tension was built up very well. I was thoroughly satisfied by the end of the book. And after that, I really wanted more Lucy and Josh content, but unfortunately, I'm pretty sure this is a standalone. Also, with the smut scenes, I haven't read a lot of adult romance books, so in my experience, this was the best book for the smut scenes. And if you guys have any recommendations for adult romance novel, please leave them down below because I would really love to read some more. The second book I've read this month was a DNF, and that was The Whisper Man by Alex North. Tom moved to this new town called Featherbank with his son after the passing of his wife. And this town, Featherbank, has a very dark past because 20 years ago there was a serial killer named the Whisper Man who was abducting and murdering boys. The killer would lure his victims by whispering to them from their windows. A detective named Frank Carter caught that killer 20 years ago, and that killer is now in jail. So presently, when they moved to town, things again started happening. There are abductions and murders of little boys. And Tom then finds out that his son has been hearing whispers at his window. Since this is a DNF, obviously I don't have a star rating. The whole reason why I DNF'd it because through this synopsis I thought we were following Tom and his son, but we're actually also following the detective. And personally, I actually don't like detective stories. I think they're a bit boring for me. Not that the writing or anything was boring, it's just I don't find detective stories very thrilling. But anyway, the third book I read this month was And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. 10 strangers were invited to an island off the coast of Devon by the owner of the island. One by one, then start to die. That's all you basically need to know about the synopsis. I gave this book 5 stars because I absolutely love it. I read this for a book club that at Katie's chapter from Bookstagrammer started. I'll link her Bookstagrammer profile down below for you to check out. She actually is taking a little break from Instagram, but she will be posting new content soon, and I absolutely love her. She's such a sweet person. So this book was the October pick. I know I read it in November. It's because the library had too many holes on it and I had to wait for a little while. This ebook was very short. I read it in a day. It was, oh my god, it was so good. There was suspense on every single page, and for a short book, that's such an amazing thing to do. I don't know about you, but when I read murder mysteries, I think everyone is a suspect, so I don't trust anyone. And I came up with some theories throughout the whole book, and everything was just wrong. You will never know what happens until literally in the epilogue. I'm speechless. That book was so good. Agatha Christie did such a good job distinguishing those characters because we have 10 characters and you will know every single one of them because they're so distinguished. If you're starting to read mystery books, I suggest you pick this one up because it's a classic whodunit murder, and I think you will enjoy it because it's a very fast read as well. The fourth book I read this month was Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. We follow Macy, who currently is engaged to Sean, who is a financially secured man who she really hasn't even opened her heart to. And then she runs into Elliot, who was her best friend when she was growing up. They haven't seen each other in about 15 years. On New Year's Eve 15 years ago, they had a major fallout and they haven't talked ever since. And when they ran into each other, feelings started to develop. I gave this book 4.5 star. Obviously, it's a Christina Lauren book. Even though I've only read, including this one, 3 books, I think this would be my second favorite. The first favorite is definitely Unhoneymooners. You have to read that. It's such a good book. This is told in dual timelines, so it's the present, and we followed Lucy and Josh 18 years ago when they first met until the fallout, basically. This book talks about grief and finding yourself through grief and friendship and opening yourself up to love again. Again, it's a Christina Lauren book, so these characters have amazing chemistry. Once again, did not disappoint on that because it always reminds me of my own relationship. I really enjoyed this book because it's a more darker story. Normally, Christina Lauren book is very fun, light, and fast, and just with a lot of smut scenes. Don't get me wrong, this one had smut scenes too, but the plot itself is much darker, and I really liked it. The fifth book I read was Wilder Girls by Rory Power. Ragstor Island is quarantined at the moment because of an outbreak called the Tox. On Ragstor Island, there is a Ragstor girls' school, and all of them have been infected by the Tox. And the Tox mutates its victims. For example, one girl has developed a second spine and the other girl developed gills. As the mutation progresses, the Tox kills them. I gave this book 3.5 stars. I think the premise of this book was very, very cool. I haven't really read this type of book before. This was definitely told in 2 perspectives. One following the main character Hetty and one following her best friend Bayet. Like I said, I really love the concept of this book, and the gore in this book was done very well. It actually made me queasy, and I think I'm pretty sure I shivered like a few times because it is gross. If you're squeamish, I suggest you don't pick this book up because I know a few friends who are squeamish that picked this book up and they immediately put it down because they couldn't handle it, so it's just a little warning. This book was about friendships and consequences of survival because as they're quarantined, they don't really have enough food and everyone's just looking out for themselves. Very brutal situation that they're in. This book has a female-female romance. It's definitely not the whole story. It plays a little part in it. It's actually barely there, but it's there and it doesn't take over the main plot, which I really appreciate. The reason why it's 3.5 because some of the plot twists in this book was very underwhelming, and I do not like predictability in books because I like a book to keep me guessing. Like when something was revealed, I was like, okay, and then I just moved on. It wasn't really anything exciting. I definitely want to pick up the second book because I want to know obviously what happens. And have you seen the cover of the second book? I'll put it somewhere here, but geez, it's gorgeous. I mean, this one's gorgeous too. The sixth book I've read is The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. We follow Xiomara, who feels she's being unheard by her family and the people around her. So in order for her to express her feelings, she writes down her thoughts in her notebook in the form of poems. She also has a little crush on Amun, who is in her bio class, but she can't really tell her family because her mother is extremely religious and wants her to follow the way of the church. She also then gets invited to her school's slam poetry club, and obviously again she can't tell her mother because she doesn't really approve of this type of stuff. So she goes to the club meetings without her mom finding out. I gave this book 5 stars because I related to this story so much. This book is told in verse, which is why I hesitated picking it up because I was just like intimidated by it. but it's basically a normal story just structured as poems. It's like, if you've read Milk and Honey by Ruby Kaur, you know how it's like sort of more modern poetry because it makes sense, but it's just in a poem structure. That's basically it. I actually decided on a whim to read this, and it was just available in my library, so I just picked it up, and I do not regret it. I love the story. It deals with strict households, sexuality, coming of age, trying to find yourself through your art. Also, there is some sexual abuse in the story, so just watch out for that. It's also interesting because Elizabeth Acevedo is also a slam poet herself, and I'm pretty sure it's sort of loosely based on her life when she was growing up. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I was reading about it at the back of the ebook. The 7th book I read was To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. Lyra is a siren killer that kills and keeps princes' hearts, and hearts equals power. While hunting, she was forced to kill her own, and as punishment, the Sea Queen, her mother, transformed her into a human so she can retrieve the heart of a famous siren killer. Prince Elian is the heir of the most powerful kingdom, and on the side, he is actually also a famous siren killer. One day, he finds a girl drowning in the ocean and he rescues her. And she claims that she can help him eliminate all siren kind. And of course, him finding her in the middle of the fucking ocean, surprise, surprise, he does not trust her. I gave this book 3 stars. I thought it was okay. It was a bit predictable, which is why it has 3 stars. But also why it has 3 stars is because I love books set in the ocean, near the ocean, by the ocean, in the ocean, or on the ocean. Can you tell I love the ocean? I also love this book because Elian and his crew had amazing chemistry. They had witty banter. There was so much loyalty. It also reminded me of Sinbad and his crew. I don't know if you remember this, but there was a movie called Sinbad, and I absolutely loved that movie growing up. I actually had a huge crush on Sinbad. Still do. But yeah, the 8th book I read was An Anonymous Girl by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. Jessica Ferris is desperate for money, so she signs up to a psychology study run by Dr. Lydia Shields. Jessica thinks all she has to do is answer questions about ethics and morality, but in reality, Dr. Shields has asked her to do more than that. Things get more intense as Dr. Shields tells her what to do and how to act. Jess gets paranoid because she doesn't know what is real life and what is an experiment by Dr. Shields. I gave this book 4 stars. I enjoyed this book overall. The middle part was a bit boring, and also it was a bit predictable in my opinion. However, I did enjoy the last 3/4 of the book. It was very good because it made me feel paranoid, just exactly like Jess, and I love when books make me feel emotions. However, I did not like any of the characters because they were all major assholes, but it was intended for them to be like that, as they were written that way. But I still did not like them, and that really hindered my reading experience. The 9th book I read was Infinity Sun by Adam Silvera. I was approved by NetGalley and Simon & Schuster Australia, so thank you for them for allowing me to read this. This book was also part of the one readathon. I only read about like the last 10% of this book. Alright, so you know how in X-Men it's basically humans versus mutants. So in this world it's sort of the same thing. It's Celestials versus the humans. And Celestials are beings that have superpowers. And you know how in mutant kind there is good mutants and bad mutants, whereas in this world it's divided between spellwalkers and specters. Spellwalkers were born with powers, whereas specters actually gain their power by stealing essence from an endangered species such as phoenixes or basilisks. So we follow 2 twin brothers, Emil and Brighton, and Brighton really wants to come into power so he can help the spellwalkers with the specters. Unfortunately, Emil gets his powers, and now he has to help spellwalkers defeat specters, but he doesn't really want to. I gave this book 2 stars, but I'm pretty sure all of this is like personal preference because I prefer specific things when it comes to fantasy books. Just to clear the air, like first off, I've actually never read any Adam Silvera's books, so I'm not really familiar with his writing style until I read this book, and I actually really liked his writing style, just not in fantasy books. In this book, the writing was very colloquial, and normally in fantasy books, the writing is very sophisticated and fantastical, so I wasn't really used to that type of writing in general, and I didn't really like it. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with colloquial language in fantasy books. I just did not prefer it myself. And also, this book, I think, was more contemporary with a little bit of fantastical element in it rather than a fantasy novel with a bit of contemporary in it. I also thought the story reminded me of a lot of fantasy books, so I don't think there was a lot of originality in the story, except for the phoenixes. The only thing that kept me going through this book was the description of different breeds of phoenixes and their respective powers. I was so excited to read more about Phoenix because the only book so far I've read that has phoenixes is obviously Harry Potter and Chamber of Secrets. We all love Fox. Unfortunately, there was only one scene of a phoenix. After that, there was literally nothing. So I was very disappointed. But if you want to start reading fantasy books, I definitely recommend reading this book because, like I said, the writing is very, I guess, simple and it's not very complicated. So if you want to start getting into fantasy, this book is definitely for you. And I forgot to mention, this book comes out January 14th, 2020. The 10th book I read this month is Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. This was my second book for the One Readathon. We follow Simon, who is a powerful magician and a rubbish chosen one because his spells either don't work at all or work too well. He is on his last year in Watford Magical School and basically batshit's happening. It's good to not know too much about this book. It's better to go in blind, I think so, because it's more fun and entertaining that way. At least I think so. That's how I felt going into this book. I obviously gave this 5 stars. I just love it so much. I've actually ordered a physical copy for myself along with Wayward Son as well, so I can't wait to reread it and annotate it. I love it so much. I love Simon and Baz. I love the Harry Potter elements that went in here. I remember a lot of people talking about that, and I just love that so much in this book. I don't know what else to say. I just love this book so much. Sometimes when you love a book so much, you can't really put it in words. What I really want to do is to print out fan art from this and do a little spread in my journal. Also, again, if you want to get into fantasy books, I think this is also a good start because it is YA fantasy, but I feel like it's also borderline middle grade, but not really. It's hard to explain, but I think it's a good stepping stone into the genre if you want to read more fantasy. The 11th book I read, which is also my last book, is The Wicked Deep by Shay Earnshaw. This was my 3rd book for the One Readathon. 3 sisters called the Swan Sisters moved to Sparrow 300 years ago on a ship. They seduced men because they thought they were irresistible, and the town accused them of witchcraft, and then they were drowned. Now at the start of every summer since their death, they come back to Sparrow and they basically possess girls and they start drowning boys for revenge. So presently we follow Penny and Beau, and Beau is the one that recently moved into town, so now he's experiencing the Swan Sister phenomenon. I gave this book 3 stars. Again, this was set by the ocean, so you know what that means. That's why it's 3 stars. It was definitely very predictable. So there was a major plot twist in the book, which I predicted like a few pages into the book. Again, I don't really like predictability. It makes a book really boring in my opinion. I also thought the romance was a bit insta-lovey, and I'm a person that loves insta-lovey stories. I absolutely love The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon, and that story takes place in a day, and I absolutely love that. I guess it's because The Sun Is Also a Star, the characters had really good chemistry, which is why it worked. But unfortunately the characters I feel in have a lot of chemistry, which is probably why I didn't love the insta-lovey story. But overall, if you do want a fast, dark fantasy, I pretty sure this is the one for you. I know I've only read 3 books for the one readathon. I actually didn't finish the readathon because I was having a couple of crappy days and I didn't really feel like reading, so I didn't really finish the readathon. But I am actually reading Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. This is so good. I absolutely love this. That's why I haven't finished it, because I don't want to actually rush finishing it. I'm like about halfway and I'm absolutely loving it. I will definitely be posting my thoughts soon after I finish this, so be sure to follow all my socials. They'll be down in the description below. I'm so excited to finish the book and continue to Muse of Nightmares. And that's it, guys. That's the end of my wrap up. This is my first wrap up. Let me know how I did down below, because I really appreciate your feedback and all your love. I've received so much love from both of my videos so far, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I love doing this. I love talking about books. It's just so good. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!